Carl, let's jump right into it, and maybe you can tell me about growing up in Finland. Like you had an early experience with being in a forest and surrounded by nature, and that
Mhm.
how that had an influence on you early on in your life.
Well, when we grew up, it was pretty evident. Like both my dad, he grew up in a cabin, like most of his summers, when he was young, and my mom was like grew up on a farm, so pretty connected to nature already there. And then, like when they had us, four of us kids, they just put us in every single extracurricular activity they could. At least our oldest brother Jean and I went to Boy Scouts. So theirs
Nice.
was pretty. I mean, we spent winters, like any season of the year, we spent camping outside or learning about nature. But I mean, obviously, didn't just that just like exemplified what kind of our parents already instilled in us at that young age. So even like younger brother Paul and Lisa, my sister, they also really into nature, especially now, like going into working life in cities, they kind of want to like reinvigorate all those things. We were all born in Germany, but right after kind of like Jean was 5 and Paul was like 6 months, moved to Finland. And there we pretty much like after a couple of years already decided, in Finland, you just gotta have a family cabin. So
Hmm.
we kind of bought property from a cousin of my dad's, or great cousin of my dad's. And he, like used to use this land to just like, it's basically like just a little fishing hut where the men went to drink.
Oh,
And yeah, we used that property, built a cabin on top, and then we've had that for 30 years now. Sauna house was built before the main house, obviously, but that place it was midst in the forest, right next to a lake. It was completely serene. It's quite wild. Did just last year we did it with my sister. We did like this official um it's called like katsastus, which means basically someone from the National Resource Institute in Finland comes and kind of reviews your forest. And they found that it was actually quite nice, like these old growth forest types found around our cabin. And like none of these like monocultures, we just have like one species of spruce around, and it's very like homogeneous. It was like there was swamp, there was like old growth forest, there was all kinds of like really old structures, and the lake was in like really sort of good condition, really clean, really good quality. Yet you have like these, especially when you consider you have these indicators like lichen on top of trees that indicate good air quality, for example. And this, I mean, as a kid, you don't know any of these things, but afterwards you realize, okay, when we were kids, we were around very special structures, kind of very special like small mesosystems, ecosystems.
the hut that you had or the cabin, there's a special name for it in Finnish.
Yeah, mökki.
Mökki. Okay, yeah, yeah. And is that like a traditional thing? Like, do most Finnish people have a mökki to escape to?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. It's like it's typically, maybe it runs in a family, and then you just, it's gets like every generation use it together or on their own. And a lot of people also, they decide to buy their own at some point. But it's definitely something that most, at least families, tend to kind of escape to, on the weekend, like a prolonged weekend even. You just like
Yeah.
live up there, escape a bit.
Sounds amazing. It's great that you have such a long history with the same place, right? Like you've been
Yeah.
going for so long. And this survey that you mentioned, is that a standard thing that is done in Finland, like every year, or?
Mm, No, not at all. Sister and I, we were just sort of, we always had that thought that we might we might kind of protect some of the land we own.
Hmm.
So we decided, okay, before we do that, we want to kind of see, like, I mean, I know trees, but I don't like a very sort of comprehensive view of the whole thing. We wanted to get an expert to like look at it, and, like check out, what does the soil look like? What is the state of the swamp that surrounds kind of some of the forest? And it was just our kind of wish to understand it better, so we could actually go to like protect or aim to protect the land we own or the forest we own, and to see if it even makes sense. they could have been like in really bad shape. There could have been like a lot of parasitic growth on like specific species, and then you can also like decide against. Maybe you need to do like a clear cut of like a hectare or more. So
And how did you go about that? Like, who'd you call when you want to check the health of your forest?
it's basically the National Forest like governmental institute. You can get the independent one, but when they have that service, it doesn't cost anything, which is pretty amazing.
Can you do that in Switzerland too, or is that a Finnish thing?
You can do that in Switzerland too. It's
Okay.
a little different, I think. It has to go over a few more kind of official steps, as far as I know. Yeah, but I mean, technically, there's in Switzerland, as far as I know, there's more of a communal sort of organization when it comes to kind of reviewing parts of like cantonal forests or cantonal old forest, for example.
Yeah.
Like federal forests, obviously, there's probably kind of a similar procedure. Like, I mean, I work at a federal institute and we offer a lot of that stuff. Like, I think a lot of stuff is like happens pro bono, but obviously sometimes we obviously value if it can maybe lead to like a co-project or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell me one of your oldest memories from the forest there from Finland. Like,
Finland.
put me back in the what do you think back when you think back 30 years or so about being around that cabin and how that influenced you into what do you do now, which we'll get into a little bit more.
Well, I can tell you two stories. One's when we first, I still have the pictures when we started building the cabin. There's these, I don't know if you know where the capercaillie is.
Nope.
Capercaillie is a very big bird. It looks a very beautiful bird. It's has these very recognizable like bellows.
Mm-hmm.
You can find them in Switzerland as well. They need very specific habitat. Finland has a lot of like, especially as I told you before, we have a lot of these like old growth forest types where there's a lot of light at like lower vegetation height, and a lot of like blueberries, for example, which these capercaillies like. But they're very like imposing birds. So when it was like, I don't know, first couple of months of building, and one of these male birds comes up like full in hormones and starts like pseudo charging some of the builders, like our neighbors and even our mom. So it was like as a kid, it was kind of real fun thing to see that, here at the cabin, anything can happen. Like you can just get like, you can stand in front of a very aggressive giant bird at any time of the day.
And it wasn't terrifying how old were you?
Oh, hell yeah, it was terrifying. You were like
Yeah.
hiding behind all the adults. But we had a very legendary neighbor we all like think back to very like fondly, and he just like went on all fours and tried to like approach the capercaillie, like try to signal that he's a friend, but I think it still charged him. And the second story is actually doesn't relate so much to the cabin, but during the Boy Scouts, we did this like midwinter sort of orientation challenge. We had to find like a specific camp, just like with very like minimal sort of equipment and stuff. You just had to like sort of orient yourself within the landscape and like with a compass. It's a very popular sport, by the way, in Finland.
Oh, nice.
But we're just like, there I had this connection to like kind of bit more of the wild, sort of unpredictable side to forests, where we got desperately lost. Even our like group leader had no idea, and he was like leading 13-year-old kids around, 14-year-old kids. We got ultra lost, and then we were like sort of hiking next to a frozen lake. It was deep winter in Finland. It's like minus 25 degrees, and I crashed into the lake. It was like one lake. There, a group leader was like, "Okay, it's serious, like we don't even know where we're going. We don't know where the camp is, and this kid is like half drenched in like at minus 25 degrees." So we just like started running in one direction. Luckily, like after maybe like 45 minutes, we finally get there. And then kind of I warmed myself up in like the main tent. We had this a very specific sort of Finnish military tent where you have the oven that is basically supporting the whole tent for like 12 people.
So it's in the center, and it's like a teepee structure.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was warming up, but then they sent me out again. So I had to dig my own like sort of like a one-man tent, because that was the whole point. We're Boy Scouts. We were supposed to like
Sur-
survive on your own. Then I was like just barely warmed up, had to dig this in the middle of the night. I finally set it up, go in like double sleeping bag. I was like, finally I can like sleep. Then I hear like wolves howling. I was like, and I kind of love this, but it's also like, this is, you gotta, you gotta have certain mentality for this shit.
yeah, especially at what age were you at this
I was
time?
like 13.
Okay, yeah, 13 years old, out in the
Yeah.
wild with wolves
Yeah.
around you.
That was
So just
like,
about, yeah, nearly had a near-death experience falling through like a quite
yeah.
interesting childhood. And so all of that, and you still have a big passion for being in nature and the woods. So I think when we wanted to have this conversation, and the main reason I wanted to talk to you about is when we met before, the first time you told me about what you do for a job, which I
Yeah.
thought was one of the coolest jobs I've ever heard about, which I never heard about until you told me about. I'm like, whoa, this is a thing that you could do. So maybe tell me how you ended up in Austria studying biology or forestry.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good question because I kind of took the long route and went first to Austria to kind of build a base. Like studying biology, that was clear. I was didn't even have any hesitation. That was going to be the one. But I maybe at the start I would have liked to know. Like in retrospect, it's always easy to say that there's other ways. I could have just done maybe like forestry apprenticeship or something like that. But I mean, never like doesn't matter. And now I went this way. I studied biology in Austria. And then from there, I went to Norway because I kind of wanted to get back to Scandinavia. And they offered this master course that was about Arctic ecosystems and northern populations, which was basically understanding, you have all these very specifically adapted animal species that are, have very like seasonal cycles, all connected to the very like extremely like fluctuating climatic conditions that are in like the upper north or in the Arctic, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also a really good decision. I was happy I did that, but in the end, I did another 180 and went back and focused, like did my thesis on bark beetles and wind throw events, how seasonally, like on the coast and in Scandinavia and in Europe, like extreme weather conditions and especially wind throw have caused like these massive bark beetle outbreaks. And I did a literature review on like the sort of the like a comprehensive review on all the findings and what are like some methods of trying to combat massive bark beetle outbreaks.
What's wind throw?
It's just a term to describe trees that have been thrown by wind, sort of toppled. Beetles are thrive on like freshly, especially like weakened trees, especially spruce. Like this specific beetle it does attack other trees, but only if it's in already massive numbers when it has accumulated from spruce. So if there's a lot of spruce being thrown, these beetles sort of have this effect that they brood in these spruce trees, and then they can have these sister broods, they're called, that can already attack surrounding like weakened trees or even healthy trees if there are enough beetles.
And why Austria? How did you end up in Austria studying there, and not why not do a course in Finland or?
I was not very good at school. I didn't have the luxury of choosing where to study. So actually my grades weren't good enough for Finland. I also tried Denmark at the start. Germany, I was too bad like as well. I was Switzerland, also no chance. And then I got a little frustrated, but then a good friend of mine told me, "Hey, you don't need to prove your grades in Austria."
Was it a competitive field to get into in Finland, like more so than Austria? Like, how does the point system work there?
I think it's definitely I think it was, at least at that time. Funnily enough, I tried again for my master's in Finland, like didn't work again. So
Oh,
so yeah, it's quite like, especially I think biology, when I tried in Zurich, it was like, the what's it called again?
biology. I don't know what's big for about ETH or like no.
Yeah, it's University of Zurich. I tried. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
if you got bad grades, ETH is not for you. There's no
Okay.
uh,
All right. Yeah, they're filter. Yeah.
filter.
Yeah, the grading system I always found funny about getting into college, like right now. It's always like Yeah, I have friends in Ireland that also had challenges getting into their courses, and then they ended up finding a different way. A friend of mine, it's not the same as biology, but he wanted to get into multimedia, and he didn't
Yeah.
have. I think he needed 400 points, and he had 390, so he couldn't
Mm.
get in. He ended up doing a portfolio, getting
Yeah.
a work experience, and now he's a huge artist in New
Yeah.
York.
Love those stories where it's like you just find your own way, you know. And if you really want it, you'll find a way.
Exactly, and it sounds like it worked out great for you, right? From Austria, I'm sure. What was it like studying in Austria? Did you enjoy the experience there, or
Well, yeah,
where were you?
the Austrians are fun people. They're just characters, you know. There's not. Especially also the professors. It was just you don't have a dull moment. Sort of, they're a bit old school, a bit conservative. You know, you'd have to like address them properly and stuff. But in the end, they're actually quite like anti-establishment, and they were like giving you a break if they saw like potential in you and stuff. So it was like I
That's great.
enjoyed it quite a lot actually.
Nice. So yeah, it worked out perfectly then in the end.
Yeah.
Nice. And then back to Norway. How long was the masters in Norway?
The master's was 3 years. No, actually, it was 2 years. During the time I was there, fortunately, our mom died, so it was a bit tough. But they were like very lenient, and they gave me another year to complete the course because I took like a half year off to be with the family.
Yeah, of course, of course. Okay, and then so from Austria to Norway, and then you work in Switzerland now, an
Hmm.
organization. But maybe tell me the story a little bit about how you ended up in Switzerland, because there's a funny
Hmm.
story around COVID and your brother Paul, who I know that lives
Yeah,
here.
yeah. He was like when COVID hit, I lost my job working as a Northern Lights guide in Norway. It was kind of sort of my student job there, and because it was tourism, they cut me off immediately, like next day.
Oh wow,
And had to find kind of a way. First started to selling workwear and paid my rent that way. But then I worked on the farm of my friend that I lived with in central Norway, and there already I sent out applications. And then kind of at some point my like Paul was sending me these ads for this very specific company. It was a federal institute called Federal Institute for Forest, Snow and Landscape Research. And he was like, he just knows me better than I know myself. So he already knew, don't even consider anything else. Try this, go full in, apply to everything they have and try to find your way. I was like, I took it to heart the advice he gave me. And after about 6 different jobs I applied to, had like 7 different interviews, and eventually worked out was the group that studies entomology. So studies insects, forest insects, and yeah, couldn't be happier that
that,
that he
that's
kind of
brilliant.
gave me the nudge.
And what was the interview process like? Were you looking at open positions on their website and just applying and trying to get a foot in the door, then basically at any position with them?
Yeah, exactly. It was,
Okay.
I basically just looked at everything they had, and I didn't know anyone there. So there was I couldn't get in a reference or anything. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go full in and apply to everything they have.
You
As you
just
said, as we talked before, it doesn't matter. Like if you get in, you'll find a way to
yeah.
find something that exactly like that's for you.
And what's the interview process like? Did you have to do I guess that you send your CV and then they ask you about your experience and you have to tell about a motivation about why you want to work there, or what's the process like?
Yeah, it was pretty standard, I'd say. Like it was classic. If they liked you, they invited you for an interview, and then during the interview, it was sort of very hands-on. It was not much about going through my CV. It was basically about open questions of like, what kind of worker are you, and what is your connection to forest?
Okay.
That
Okay.
was
So
it.
it wasn't like in my field in IT, usually it's about, okay, we'll do a technical interview and then
Yeah.
we'll do like an interview like this. And it's kind of, and then a cultural fit and so on. But it sounds it was more like about finding out what type of person you are and what drives you to this field, right?
Yeah, well, on one hand, it was an entry-level job, sort of. So that
Mhm.
plays a role too. I mean, if it was a senior level job, they would have tested differently and
Of course.
put on some like what I heard from others, like that what they usually do is like put up a sort of, you have to do a presentation, about something. But the thing was, later on, when I applied for my technician job, it was the most important thing was they wanted to find out if I was a person that was willing to sacrifice some of my time, in Zurich, to go out and be working in the field, in the forest for 4 days straight.
Okay, so they wanted to see, did you just want a desk job, or were you happy to actually go out in the field and do the hard work, which,
Yeah.
knowing your background that we just discussed, sounded like the perfect job for you, right? Being out in nature and being surrounded by that. So what's your official title there? Is it like a forest technician, or like what's is that
Exactly.
it?
No. Forced to finish.
Okay, that's cool. And do you speak German too? Is their work all in German or in English?
Yeah, it's German. It's Swiss
It's German.
German. So my Swiss German is kind of funky. It's like, because I loan words from different dialects, so people sometimes just can't place it. They're like, use words from Aargau, use words from Graubünden, use words from Bern, use words from Luzern. It's like they're just a bit weirded out sometimes, but it works.
Because you're just constantly traveling around different parts, I guess, too, and picking up different dialects.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my native tongue, so it's like I just pick up anything I hear.
Great, I love it.
Sometimes if I'm in close by here in Aargau and I say Allegra, like what they use in Graubünden, and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
it's like this guy's got a few screws loose, I guess.
I love it. So tell me a bit about the work at the WSL, right? What's it stand for? First of all, like Wildschnee and
So Waldschnee und Landschaft.
Okay, Landschaft. Okay.
There's no landscape.
And okay, so what's a typical work week there? Like, what's it involve?
So usually what we do is on a Sunday we call each other and we figure out, okay, first of all we have about 160 active sites that we go do inventory on. These are like these small experimental plots, but every year we only have about 15 to 25 of them, because you obviously don't go. Forests need a lot of time to grow. We do it on kind of like the time scale of 5 to 8 years to 10 years to 12 years and even 15 years. So it depends on which year we are where, and then how intense our kind of schedule is for that year. But coming back, like on a Sunday, we call each other and we see, okay, all the work we have to do in which plot for that year. And okay, where's the weather good, and where is the work needed in that period of time? For example, if we only have 3 weeks until the forester goes in and does like a sort of like a cut, sort of like basic, like according to his management plan, like does a cut. Okay, we only have a window of 3 weeks to go there, so we have to prioritize. But we're often in a situation where we can freely decide according to weather, according to conditions, according to whatever suits best, which is kind of a freedom I really enjoy. That
sounds great, actually.
This kind of not spontaneous, but like sort of it gives a lot of variety and gives a lot of you feel like you're very independent and very sort of free to choose and do the work as efficient as you see fit.
What does the work look like? So you're going into these forests and measuring trees, and you mentioned to me before that you're comparing different varieties of trees and how they complement each other or grow next to each other. Is that the main focus, or is it other things?
I mean, that's one of them. So what we do is like we go out with this, like we have a VW bus that's outfitted with all equipment we need, which is pretty important because otherwise it's get kind of, there's always some things that happen in the field that are just unpredictable, and then you need to kind of cover for. So what we do is some of these sites, experimental plots, they've already been measured for over 100 years or close to. Most of these really old ones, they're the ones that we kind of already reached the experiment outcome. Because for example, we want to see if a specific origin of a species, like let's say even exotic species like a Japanese larch tree would grow at kind of a sort of under lowland conditions in Switzerland, which is usually, it's kind of like actually a subalpine or alpine tree in Japan. and we would like basically just do inventories, and every first like 5 years to see like the dynamics of like a young stand, because it's kind of like there's a lot happening at the early stages. Then you extend that to like kind of 10 years or 12 years or whatever, and then you see how that like if it proliferates, or maybe a experiment outcome could be that no, doesn't grow at all. It's really unhealthy, is developing different parasites at different age levels, or different diseases, is prone to a specific virus that is already prevalent in that area, all kinds of things.
So you're testing the species of the trees, how they interact with each other, and the areas and the regions and the altitude. So there's a lot of variables going into it, I guess.
Exactly.
What's the main goal of the experiment? Is it future-proofing forests or so? It's saying, okay, if the
So we
climate...
have like different experiment groups, and these are all, there's like this origin, one specific origin of species. There's different, like as you just said, comparing different species and how they grow in relation to each other. So if, for example, there could be a very shade tolerant tree and a very light tolerant tree, and you can tell depending in which spacing and under which like specific site conditions you plant them. For example, if it's a like a planting experiment, you can tell rearranging them in different forms in each like subplot. You can tell, okay, this might be the best way to plant these two species next to each other to grow best, or to produce the best sort of the straightest stems, for example.
Okay. And what's the average life cycle of these experiments? Is it like, you mentioned that there's some that have been running since, the First World War, like, right? So 1920s, and so 1910. That's a long time, and it's kind of cool to be working in a field that has been around for so long, like, right? Or plots especially too.
Well, some of these experiments, they're sort of short-lived because you can already tell, especially if there's some like exotic species plantations where you can tell already after 30 years, this is kind of like, there's always has to be a thought going into it. Okay, what is my hypothesis? What are the variables I want to measure? It's like going just with the flow in some of the experiments is a very bad idea, because you run into so many site-specific conditions that might kind of murky up your results, that you have to really plan to, okay, what do you want to find out? And sometimes it's enough to set up a 30 or 40 year span, and you already have your experiment outcome. And then you can leave that plot to be and tell the forester, hey, you can do with this whatever you want. This is now like finished.
What are some of those surprising variables that pop up? Do you have any examples of what could be a variable that changes the experiment?
So there could be anything. Like the simplest thing is, for example, there's very different management methods being done at specific, like on a cantonal level. Like in Western Switzerland, they do this thing called like agroforestry, which is kind of like, it's just a term loaned from agriculture, sort of, where they do these kind of like quadratic plots of forest plots, where sort of these forest paths run through. What they also do in Western Switzerland still, which is sort of a clear cut, and then they kind of like mulch over the soil. Sort of, it's not a very natural process how a tree would grow. And these are things you have to consider when you're planting, for example, Douglas firs, which is an introduced species. I don't know when it was introduced, but probably over 100 years ago to Switzerland. How that Douglas fir will grow in comparison to something that might resemble much more natural conditions, and where trees are taken out sort of like specifically, and not sort of like where it's like clear-cut area every 40 years.
Okay.
These are things you have to consider when you plan your experiment, that these like site-specific soil conditions might be extremely dissimilar.
How often does your hypothesis adapt or change? Like, how agile is it, right? Is that a terminology that you guys have that you use, or you say, okay, we're going to review this every week when we meet up together, or what's the review process like?
No, I mean, just a really good point. Like it's because we're actually in the process of doing it now. Because there's a lot of old plots that are sort of like passive, where you think we have to probably abandon to work more efficiently on some plots that show more sort of promise when it comes to the exact hypotheses we want to focus on. You know, especially when you're thinking now, the past 30 years, climate adapted trees. Which are the trees of the future that can actually adapt to heat stress or drought?
Okay.
So you definitely have to have sort of a agility or like a flexibility when it comes to these experiments. When you're saying that sort of, okay, we reached our previous outcome, which could have been negative, positive, whatever. Every outcome is an outcome. But then we say, okay, we still have, let's say, we have Austrian black pine, and it's like 40 years old now, but let's keep using the stand and see how it will develop naturally instead of the management method that was used previously. You know, that could be like a very easy solution because you actually don't have to do much instead of like letting it run wild, but you can tell, for example, if the black spruce will just be submerged under, you know, already locally sort of adapted species, or will it also proliferate there? It's like
So the review process, then you mentioned, okay, maybe at the end of the year you look at it, but will you review the outcomes or the progress every quarter, or you're not looking at it every week, I guess, like, right? Or
no. These timescales that we work in, they're so funny because I mean I'm looking at like research outcomes or results that maybe 2 generations before me have
wow.
worked for. You know, it's like this, and the same is going to happen to me. I'm not going to be working on my own results. I'm working on somebody else's, and somebody else is going to be working on mine.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I'm trying to compare it to software, but it's completely different, right? Like it's the
like you probably work in like this like the developing software is like it's faster than you can blink.
yeah. We'll think of something today and we'll try to deploy it in 2 days, like, right?
Yeah.
To experiment and try. Oh, it's not working out, and pivot.
We do it maybe do a review every let's say 15 to 20 years.
So what are the trees being used for? Go in and who decides what tree gets cut down and what tree doesn't get cut down, etc.
Well, first of all our like we have very few plots that are owned by us. So all of these are cooperations with local forest owners, federally owned forests, cantonally owned forests, privately owned forests. So basically we only decide what is being done in our experimental plots, but always considering kind of first you have that conversation, right, with the forest owner. You ask, what is your management scheme? But often they're extremely grateful for the data we can share with them afterwards, because we can tell them obviously it's very specific, but for that plot, we tell you very specifically and in detail, like the standing volume of trees that can be sort of extrapolated to bigger, like a higher magnitude, but also there might be some interesting findings on species composition, and especially at like age structure that they might not be expecting, for example, and then the forest owner might decide against or decide for keeping sort of early successional trees like birches. But there's always the wish of the forester is always in the forefront, and we also want that. We want to make research that actually helps these forest owners first off financially, but also kind of doing it with management methods that can do both. That actually, which is getting way more common, but you have these. It's called like I don't know what the English term is, but it's like plenterum, which is like a very sort of it's quite a sustainable way of doing forestry, and you take out only very specific trees in like a specific age composition, leave all the rest, so it can develop kind of like a very stratified structure, or like keep developing. And regarding coming back to what you said about protective forests, you're absolutely right. There's some regulations we cannot touch. Obviously, there's like protective forests when it comes to protecting from landslides and avalanches and all that stuff. And which is becoming way more prevalent now. So it's very often like overruling sort of what even some forest owners kind of want to decide for.
When we think about logging, we think about Amazon trees being cut down and people going in and cutting down trees illegally there because they're so profitable.
Yeah.
Is that a thing across Europe, Switzerland, or?
I mean, you have to think about like Switzerland is a very small country. It was quite limited forest resources. So people are very protective of forests. This is just my personal experience kind of on the top. And there's very strong regulation in Switzerland. So logging in a sense happens obviously for as a resource as a building material. Logging is still happening for we're all talking legal logging, right? So legal logging is still happening as a means to produce pellets, especially pine, for example. So logging happens here just as anywhere else, but it's very regulated and it's very it's kind of special because Switzerland owns so few mills that can handle very large trees that most often these like the trees that have reached mature age and are like old growth or like these really thick trees, there's no point in cutting them down because no mill can handle them anymore.
Oh, wow. What's the ideal age for cutting down a tree?
Completely
Depending
species
yeah.
dependent.
So what would be a species that's like used mostly in, I don't know, in building structures now? I know
It's
woodwork. Spruce. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Spruce,
spruce.
most typical.
Okay.
Yeah, but obviously have a lot of like for specific uses, obviously you can use pine. You have a lot of like sort of nut species, like walnuts and cherries and stuff like that, and they're used. But then again, there's once that's very specific is the mountain spruce called Arve, which all these mountain huts are built of especially in Graubünden and in Grischun and in Ticino, which is very specific to Switzerland. These are like species used for that specifically.
Does it have a specific feature or so on? Is it sturdy, a good tree for structural integrity and so on in a building? Or like, I guess the wood varies, right?
It has similar qualities. I mean, it's sort of it's a bit of a soft wood, so it's quite useful for building. But it has enough structural integrity to uphold like a complete house. But historically, obviously, it was already at very high altitudes. So, are you gonna pull up all the wood up the mountain, or are you gonna use the wood that's already there?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. You wouldn't think about it. You're obviously going to use what's close by, right? That you don't have to transport.
And these structures back then, they weren't big. You could like a couple of trees might even suffice. For a very simplistic structure.
So going back to the tools that you mentioned in your van, I'm curious to find out like what give me an example of some of the tools that you use in the field on a weekly basis.
Well, the cool thing is that many of these tools haven't changed a bit since like for several decades and stuff. So kind of cool to see all the old pictures of the old technicians using the same things. But when we go in and we prepare a plot, like we take in new trees that have reached a diameter of 8 centimeters. We have like sort of a machete, which is like it's a Ticino type sort of gardening tool actually, which we can like spike into logs and like cut off like individual branches and stuff. We always have that with us to kind of prune the tree a bit. So when it grows, it doesn't have like small branches at the chest height where we always want to measure the trees. And for that, we use a caliper. It's a very standard issue forestry caliper. It looks kind of has like a main bar and then like a slidable sort of adjustable sort of two measuring kind of what's it called pins. And you just put around the tree like this and then you just read off. Very easy. It's a quick diameter. And then what they used to use always is obviously circumference, also the easiest. And we still do that for trees that are over 80 centimeters because otherwise you're going to have to use like a caliper that's wider than you. And then we have for all things when it comes to like height and distances and all that stuff and crown like length, we use ultrasound.
Okay.
Ultrasound you can use a laser, you can use other things, but ultrasound has the advantage that it can penetrate. It uses acoustics, right? So it can penetrate foliage and can penetrate a few branches. So you have sort of a transponder there that kind of like where the acoustic signals bounces back, and it's quite a
Okay.
useful tool to kind of measure distances and heights in the forest.
So you're sticking like a target on the tree you want to measure, and then you're seeing. Okay. Wow. Cool.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny because sometimes when it's too loud, like when there's a chainsaw right next to you, when there's grasshoppers stridulating, like chirping, when it's too loud or there's a field next by, you can't use it anymore. You realize it's thrown off because there's so many acoustic signals coming in.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
the only thing. Like, for example, when it rains heavy, we can't use it.
Okay. And then what's the alternative then? The old school way, I guess. Like right.
No, you just come back.
Okay.
Because this is the thing we use. This is our best tool.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed it actually. I thought maybe there's like the laser wouldn't work because you're going to be bumping into branches the whole time.
Yeah, there's the thing with like the modern tools. For example, like people or scientists want to get to a stage where you kind of have like these like laser image generated clouds where you go through with a laser scanner and it measures like millions of like small like targets that it kind of gives you like a 3D picture of like individual trees. Still at this developing stage, I would say, but it's definitely useful for it's going to be the tool for the future to like measure forest stands, you know, especially below canopy, because you can get like a complete 3D picture of the whole forest stand. But now it just takes too much time, and it's also a lot of error where you get structures that actually aren't trees and stuff. So
Right.
you know,
Yeah. It's just not there yet.
yeah.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. And is most of your time spent at the base of the tree, or is it also in the soil around it? Are you looking at the insects around the tree and so on? Are these all things you're exploring, or?
Well, what we talked before, like until now, it's the main project I work on, and this is really focused on growth and yield of financially used forest or economically used forest, I should say.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's other projects that focus on natural reserves, like where there's no logging being done, for example. There's other projects that look at like they do plantations, only plantations. But I work with two other groups where I look at the microclimate. So I do these small microclimate weather stations in mountainous forests, where I install them there, where it sort of measures, you know, sort of a flux of like water potential within like the first 15 centimeters of the soil, which is basically the most important available water for young plants.
That first layer. Okay.
So they're like, it's kind of like I have a bit of a connection to the upper soil at least, but I mean lower soil. It's a world for itself. Like I'm not.
Yeah, because I guess the younger
We have
plants.
experts for those, and we have
Yeah.
people that are complete. Like, you know, we have our worm guy, we have our like soil guy, we have our like canopy woman, and whatever. Like we have all
I
these.
love it. The lunch conversations must be super interesting.
And really, yeah, it's like it's definitely not dull, but yeah, it's nice. A bunch of lovable nerds. Yeah.
I love it. Tell me, like, so being around Switzerland a lot and traveling to different parts. I
Yeah.
love hiking. I love being in nature. Do you have a special place you love being here in Switzerland, particularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think like on the hiking department, you're outdoing me by like
I don't know
hundreds.
now.
Like, yeah, I think you do some really nice hikes.
Thanks.
Sometimes I have the feeling that you know, I'm out so much. Also, sometimes in mountainous forest, and sometimes I also value just being here, like being in
Yeah,
the city.
I get that.
It's
Yeah.
not like natural, right? But I occasionally go to what I specifically like is kind of the area around like Berner Oberland.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But also what's I love about Switzerland, there's so many small little valleys that are very sort of niche, that very sort of a very specific type of habitats that I love to explore. And I always like when you stumble upon one of these randomly, it's always like, damn, okay, that's why I do this, you know.
You know, there's a Reddit page called Switzerland is Fake. Have you heard about this?
No,
So
sounds great.
it's a Reddit thread that people just post pictures and
Yeah.
they talk about it like it's a rendered image. They're like, "Oh, look at this pristine lake," but they messed up because there's a bit of grass coming out from the lake here. There's obviously an issue in the render. It's too perfect. It can't be real. It's I'll send it to you. It's really
This is
really
good.
funny. Yeah, it's amazing.
This
Nice, man.
I actually have a Norwegian buddy that he also like back when I lived in Norway, it was like he saw pictures of Switzerland. He was like, "This is fake. I don't believe you. Like I don't understand why you're here. Why aren't you back there?"
Yeah, yeah, it's pristine. I brought a friend to Ireland, a Swiss friend,
Yeah.
and he was asking, "Oh, why are your lakes black? Why do you have black water in your lakes? Why aren't they pristine?" I guess he's used to seeing O'Shaughnessy and stuff like, you
Yeah.
know. I'm like, "This is our water. Sorry, we have it's a different type of beauty in Ireland."
Dark beauty.
Nice.
It's a dark beauty.
Yeah, it's a darker beauty. I have so many questions here. I'm gonna try to get through a few more before
Yeah.
I let you go. So we've talked about the work. We talked about your favorite region. And we've talked about maybe tell me a little bit of the challenges of the work. Like maybe let's say your first month or something. Maybe something that surprised you about the work that you weren't expecting. Like, can you think of something there?
I mean, it wasn't like something unexpected, but obviously like being away from sort of home for like 4 days straight, my start was like, okay, yeah, kind you're not missing out, but you have to kind of consider, you have to kind of like accept it and be like, and just enjoy sort of just having downtime in a hotel afterwards, you know, after a long day in the forest. Also the driving, I have to do so much driving. I'm like a third of the time in the car, which is like, I have these, like 3 other technicians I work with. They're also just like these work animals. Like they just, you know, they put on the same radio channel for for like 4 hours straight. And I'm like, boy, guys, you like, you know, I need a bit of variety.
Yeah, I was gonna say like,
It's
yeah,
like
okay, at
these
least you
all
can
like,
listen to podcasts or something. But yeah, when
yeah,
you're
but
sharing a
like,
car, then
it's
yeah,
just they're then again, like coming back to what we talked before, is like they're so the person for this job that they're like, this is just part of it. I'm just gonna like beeline to the other side of Switzerland now, and
that's it.
I'm
It's
happy.
just second nature. Okay,
No,
yeah, I get it. That's
no,
cool.
that was like what unexpected.
And you're staying in hotels a lot of time. Do you ever camp out, or that's never a thing? Like, right, you're always
It depends completely on the person you're with, because I'm like I'm like the youngest in the team, so I'm also kind of open to all kinds of different accommodation. I've like taken Airbnbs, I've booked like small mountain log cabins and stuff, and I'm pretty flexible there. But I have two older gentlemen working with me, and I obviously understand, you know, at some point you're just like, "Ah, I just want a nice heated room with shower, and, you know, like, like eat restaurant in a hotel, eat there, and, you know, have everything fixed and not have to think about anything." And I get it, you know, it's after four
the
days in
novelty
the
is
cold
worn off.
forest. It's
Maybe they're
like,
like, okay, I
if
just want to get into a
if
warm bed.
if
I don't.
work pays for it, you know, it's like, yeah, obviously. But
Okay.
sometimes I definitely enjoy that a bit more of an adventurous side to it, you know, like you just, you know, you just go to, you just camp out or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that would be appealing. I don't know if I did it for 10 years, if it'd still be as exciting, but yeah. So I understand those gentlemen, but yeah, for
Yeah.
sure at the start, I'd love to do that.
I have actually have one technician that works for the nature reserve project, and he's that type of guy. I mean, he's like mid 50s, but he's like he's so outdoorsy. He just loves working the force. He hates being at the office. And he's just, he's the type of guy that if I'm working with him, it's easy. Like you can just, hey, let's go, get some random ass cabin there, and like enjoy it.
That's cool. And how does the work assignments work? How do you know who you're working with? Is it change every week, or is it based on the experiment you're running?
Like as I said before, it's quite flexible. So like depending on who has time, when somebody maybe has to be back in town on a Wednesday afternoon, and then also changes. And we are like really open. We have open communication, and we try to like figure out the best way possible. And we help each other out. Like different projects help each other out once in a while. So we're all like kind of familiar with each other's like methodologies and stuff.
Cool. So if someone wanted to get into this field, like what would
Yeah.
be your advice to them? Like how would you go about it? Maybe someone in the early career, or maybe someone that wanted to change career and say, okay, this sounds fascinating to me. Like how can you be more involved? Maybe not even if you could just do it as a part-time thing.
The awesome thing in Switzerland is like, especially if you know from maybe younger age that you want to get into something like this, there's so many possibilities. Like you can do civil service, you can do voluntary service, like working for like governmental, what's it called, like institutes that offer these like reforesting projects where you go out for 2 weeks and camp out and just like reforest, replant the side of the hill or something, like in deepest Ticino. There's so many things in Switzerland you can do and get into it, which is really cool. There's like a lot of clubs and a lot of NGOs and stuff. And then there's also, it's cool because when you asked before, like biology or forestry, like there's a lot of different ways you can get into it. Like I work with foresters or forest engineers, biologists, landscape planners, and geospecialists and whatever. It's like, it doesn't really
It's a
matter.
varied field, huh? It's like there's a lot of different angles. Nice.
So
Okay, so
yeah.
yeah, please.
No, I just thought about, when if you obviously it's a bit harder when you're older and you want to kind of like change careers, but there is definitely a way if you're a bit open to sort of filling a role in specific project. Like we have a lot of different roles, like you can be a part of it doing like sort of like be a database specialist, but maybe like, okay, you can like negotiate maybe doing like 1 or 2 field days a week or something.
Right, right. So you can get a bit of both. Okay, and you mentioned we talked before. I saw that you're getting into woodwork now, and it's something that you want to do more of. What's the process like for you? Have you done a course in it, or have you created something in woodwork
No,
yet?
I mean, yeah, the thing with woodworking is you just have to start on your own.
Yeah.
Like this, I saw the best, like I've had so many small projects or like small and big projects now, just like top of my head. It's like, pardon the French, but fuck around and find out, it's like do anything. And I saw the best interview by a guy I really like, Nick Offerman. He's a famous celebrity, and he has his own woodworking shop in California, and he has like I saw like an old clip of his where he's like introducing like all the really nice like old equipment he has and stuff. But he said, and the guy asked him, he's showing the woodworking shop too. He says, "Hey, like how do you get into this?" And he's like, just start off with something, do a cutting board.
Mm.
It's like find a nice piece of wood, cut 4 sides, smoothen them out, put some furnish on it or like oil or whatever, wipe it off. End product is like,
You've
yeah,
made something.
yeah, I made something.
Yeah.
Put like 5, 6, whatever together, and you have like a box with an appendage or something. It's like
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
just
That's just start somewhere.
start somewhere.
Yeah.
Do a handle. Do a, I don't know, like a little doorknob or something. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's one piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm totally an advocate of that method.
That's the fun of it. Like you don't
Yeah.
overthink it. There's old ways of doing it, new ways. You can just do only nails and hammer, which is super
Mm.
fun because it's like you just cut everything and then just like you nail everything together. It's sturdy as hell.
The next person I'm interviewing after you actually is one of the guys I train with, Leo.
Yeah,
He is a carpenter.
nice.
He's quite young. He's 23 years old, but he won like a local Zurich competition in woodwork. Right. He's quite talented. I
I think
gotta.
I want to watch this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll send you the link to it once I record it. But yeah, so I'm keen to ask him about that. Closing question maybe, and I'll pass this question or the answer on to him. Do you have a special type of wood that you like, a tree type that you like, or maybe working with, or actually just being around?
that's a good question. I like cherry.
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 Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cherry and like maybe cherry and apple. It's very similar woods, sort of.
Is that apple from an apple tree then? Like, is that like
Yeah.
an apple tree? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And you use that in building too?
No. But it's like it's
Okay.
for like very
You
like
can create something with it.
fine types of furniture and stuff. Like you can
Yeah.
use very
Yeah.
reasonable. Well,
I was,
but I
yeah.
mean, I just didn't go with anything like boring as oak.
Yeah. Oak is still
Yeah,
beautiful though.
it's
Like, yeah.
cool. It's dope. It's dope as tree,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
cool.
And it's crazy, like something you don't associate with all. Actually, for me, I was in like it was kind of a lodge. It was in Azores, and the man built like 4 cabins. And as soon as you walk into the cabin, you can smell the wood. And even though they were built like 3 years ago, they still, it was a Japanese type of tree that they planted locally on Azores, and then
Yeah.
they built I don't know the type
Wow.
of tree. I'll find it out.
Yeah, I love that too.
Such a nice way to experience something visually and also like with a different sense too. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I think that's probably triggered my love for exploring woodwork. I think I said, okay, well, I love being around trees, I love being around nature, but you can actually like build something structurally beautiful that also has a beautiful scent to it that like you feel like it's not an artificial scent, right? You're like, wow, I'm still in the forest here, but I'm indoors.
It's the same with the Arve, they use in Switzerland, a high altitude tree, the Pinus Tembra. You go in a place that's built with this, you smell it immediately.
Love it.
Yeah.
Carl, I think we'll leave it at that then. Thank you so much. What a cool conversation. I'm pretty sure there will be a part 2 because I have a lot of questions I didn't get through. But yeah, thanks again,
Good
man.
questions. It was fun.
Cheers. Thank you.